Alright, what is up everybody? This is Alex once again, another episode of the EOT Newsflash. This is episode 96, Things on the Horizon. Yes, it is a solo show tonight because there's a lot to talk about. Now, actually it's things that I want to talk about if I'm honest, so you'll have to forgive me a few minutes of self-indulgence and we'll be back to more roundtable discussion next week when Sean and Steven are able to join us again. But before we dig in too deep tonight, I want to mention our sponsor, FlipsideGaming.com. Use the promo code EOT Newsflash at checkout to receive 10% off your order of $10 or more. Flipside Gaming, all the things you need to game, all in one great place. Awesome guys were there. So, let's get right into tonight's topic, guys. Last Thursday during one of my less successful, and that's really saying something, Thursday night throwdowns, I swear I will break that streak sometime, maybe even this week, fingers crossed. We got to talk a little bit about the announcement that Wizards had made about Modern Horizons, which is a brand new supplementary product, kind of like the old Masters sets, which, were cards that were only legal in the formats they were legal in, of course. But this one's really different. This is going to be immediately legal in Modern and older. So Modern, Vintage, Legacy, Commander, things like that. It's going to skip Standard. That's absurd. Typically, when you print new cards, before they can go, they obviously become legal as soon as they're printed into older formats, but they have to go through Standard first. They have to have their life there, which has really limited the power level of a lot of cards. Certain things getting banned in Standard wouldn't be banned in Modern and so forth from there, but they're just going to go right over it this time. Screw Standard, Standard's fine, but right over Standard, straight into Modern, printing a ton of old cards that were originally only legal in Vintage and Legacy, and also some brand new cards, which we got to see a little bit of last week, Cabal Therapist and the new Sarah Planeswalker. But what we've been kind of brainstorming this week, and probably will for the next couple of weeks until we get to the release of June 14th, and when they actually start doing previews, probably towards the end of May. Hopefully we'll all be off of Avengers hype by then. Probably not. But yeah, so until then, we've just been brainstorming, what are they possibly going to reprint? Because we have no idea what they're going to print new in this set, so we're trying to figure out what cards might they bring from old Magic into new Magic. And so they've said that they're not going to print anything from 8th edition onward. Now, I don't know if that necessarily excludes supplementary products, so I don't know if we're going to see things like Dak Faden, True Name Nemesis, things like that. I honestly don't know, and I can't say for sure, but we've been brainstorming a lot this week, the team here and I at the EOT Newsflash, about what cards we'd like to see printed. And so what I want to do tonight is give you guys my top 10 with an asterisk, because one kind of cheats. My top 10 cards that I would love to see come into the Modern format thanks to Modern Horizon. So, as always, I'd love to hear your guys' own ideas down in the comments, so don't forget to let me know. What cards are you excited to see? Is there some wacky old school Legacy card that you want to see brought into Modern? Let me know down in the comments. So first, a disclaimer. This list was a lot harder to create than I thought it was going to be, because I immediately went to look at Legacy deck lists that have been performing well recently, and so you see a lot of Delver, a lot of Stoneblade, a lot of Storm, Reanimator decks, and unfortunately there's a lot of cards in there that I think would really just either, one, break the format, or two, really rob the identities of Legacy and Modern and blur them too much together. So there's things like Force of Will are not on here. Days, Swords to Plowshare, Hymn to Turok. Those are cards that I think give Legacy its identity. And we have some relatively close approximations in Modern, so Thoughtseize, Swords to Plowshare, Cryptic Command, things of that nature. So we're not going to see any of the Legacy staples here. I tried to go way out here. I kind of bent the rules on a couple of these, but for the most part, I went way outside what you might expect to see in a set like this. Whether or not they'll have any impact in Modern is, I don't know. I just think these cards are cool. So, without further ado, let's get into our card list here. These are my top 10 cards that I'd love to see printed in Modern Horizons and enter the Modern format. Starting with, and these are in no particular order, this is just how they are on my computer. So, here we go. Number 10, Psychotog. Oh, yes. Do you guys remember Psychotog? I don't. I never played a Psychotog, but I've read stories about the horror of Psychotog. Mr. Teeth, I think his nickname was, because look at that smile. What a happy guy. Psychotog is a 1 blue-black creature ATOG. There's a whole cycle of these guys. Megatog, ATOG, Psychotog here, who is an uncommon 1/2, and you can discard from your hand, and it gets +1/+1 till the end of turn. Remove 2 cards from your graveyard from the game, and it gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. So essentially the whole idea with this deck was that you'd draw a bunch of cards, play a Psychotog, discard everything, then exile everything from your graveyard before you're able to declare blockers. Typically you'd have removed a Wonder, which if it was in the graveyard, would give everything flying, and you would kill a Psychotog in one shot. Super cool stuff here. They used to actually proxy Shadow Mage Infiltrator on Psychotog until they realized that Psychotog was just better than Shadow Mage Infiltrator. Funny how that goes. Yeah, so I think this card is super cool, you know, with things like Thought Scour, Faithless Looting, all different kinds of crazy effects that are in Modern, and, you know, just having a free discard outlet to put all kinds of cards in your graveyard. You know, I don't know what you could possibly discard with this thing to get any extra value. You know, so all of a sudden we have like a Madness deck going on as well. Maybe a Psychotog Madness brew would be really cool. So things like Lightning Axe or, Just the Wind, or, you know, any of the things I think would be really cool to see go along with Psychotog here. Maybe it's just a straight blue-black deck. Maybe it's a Grixis color deck. I don't know. Maybe Sultai. There's no telling where those could go. But I think Psychotog would be really cool to see in the Modern format. Hopefully with like a revamped version of this art, because the Vintage Masters one that was on Magic Online is pretty underwhelming and not nearly as iconic as original Captain Teeth here. Next up, we have Accumulated Knowledge. 1 in a blue instant common, draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of accumulated knowledges in all graveyards. Now this got reprinted in Masters 25 and was kind of the backbone of the blue control decks here. But I think this would be a really cool addition to blue control decks in Modern. You know, right now we have a plethora of draw effects. We have things like Opt and Serum Vision. We've got Hieroglyphic Illumination, which has become sort of a staple of Jeskai control decks. We have Think Twice and Sphinx's Revelation. But I think a card like this would kind of, you know, maybe find its way in, because for such a low investment, you get to draw just more and more cards each time you cast it. You know, maybe we start playing this alongside Mystical Teachings and dump a lot of copies in the graveyard and be able to, you know, power this up even faster. There's another card on my list which would actually go really nicely with this, you know, to put more copies of this in the graveyard and, you know, just really power it up, and then we start flashing it back with Snapcaster Mage. And yeah, I really try not to make this just a blue mage's paradise, but come on, you guys know me. But I didn't go completely off the bandwagon here. There's some really cool other colored cards in here, but I had to throw a couple sweet blue ones on here for you. So Accumulated Knowledge, really cool value engine that you can get going. I think this would be a really cool thing to see played in Modern. Next up, this is my cheat, and I do so. This is actually 7 cards in 1 card. This is because, of course, we're talking about Astral Slide, which is a 2 and a white enchantment and uncommon, originally from Onslaught. Whenever a player cycles a card, you may remove target creature from the game. If you do, return that creature to play under its owner's control at end of turn. So we're talking about things like Eternal Witness was the big one back in the day. Maybe like Kitchen Finks, Flicker Wisp, Restoration Angel, Blade Splicer, you know. Think of all the cool, you know, ETB effects that exist in Modern, and all the other ones that you might actually want to play along with this. Thragtusk, oh god. You know, there's a lot of green-white value town decks that are out there that I think would be really cool to go with this. But of course, you have to have something go along with these cards, and that's where the other 1/7 of this combination goes, and that's Lightning Rift. 1 in a red uncommon enchantment, again from Onslaught. Whenever a player cycles a card, you may pay 1, and if you do, Lightning Rift deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So here's the other half of this. So all of a sudden, when you're cycling, you get to start activating Lightning Rift in conjunction with the Astral Slide, and you get to start blinking things and shooting things, and it gets really crazy really, really fast. And so I'm just like, all about this. Maybe there's even an option to play something like some sort of an Assault Loam deck and start discounting Ancient Ones, which God forbid that card needs any more power to it. But yeah, it would be so cool, I think. So what are we cycling, though? So we do have all of the lands from Amonkhet. So we have like the Canyon Slough cycle, which was you cycle it for 2. But I don't think that's going to be good enough. So I'm looking more at the other 5 cards that I think would go well along with this. And I'm looking at the cycling lands from Onslaught. Let's get those ugly new arts out of the way. Boom! Give me classic. Yes. So there was a full cycle of essentially monocolored cycling lands, one for each color, that allowed you to cycle them and get value out of the cards. Now, this was the whole engine that made Astral Slide the deck work. Originally, it was red-white, and then moved into more of a Naiath color once that was original Mirrodin block came out, and cards like Fifth Dawn were printed, where we got to see the power of Eternal Witness really go into effect. We might get Eternal Dragon back, and I don't know if this deck would be powerful or not, but Astral Slide and Lightning Rift are stupidly powerful, at least back in the day. And I think, with all the great deck designers that are out there these days, could probably break this one pretty easily and have a really cool deck. So Astral Slide, Lightning Rift, and the cycling lands, they're all one nice, neat little package that I'd like to see in the modern format. Next up, we've got Vindicate. Yes! 1 white-black sorcery, rare, all the way from Apocalypse, destroy target permanent. Yes. Now, you might remember from Shadows over Innistrad, we had Anguished Unmaking, which was this at instant speed. You pay 3 life, but it destroys any non-land permanent, which was good back then, but, you might want to blow something up in this format. Lands, for instance. So things like a Ghost Quarter, a Celestial Colonnade, a Giant Raging Ravine, perhaps. Cards like this, I think, would maybe give a little shot in the arm to the Abzan and Mardu Pyromancer decks that we've seen kind of falling by the wayside just because they don't really have the power level, the value engine that a lot of modern decks now do. And I think a card like this would be a really good sort of stopgap for those decks just to slow the game down and make them fight a little bit more on a fairer axis. And a card like Vindicate just kind of like catches everything. I mean, it literally catches everything. So it's not super flashy. This has actually fallen out of favor within Legacy, especially. We used to see this a lot in the Esper Deathblade decks and Esper Stoneblade decks back when that was sort of the big deck in the format. So this has really fallen out of favor recently, but I think that a reprinting in Modern Horizons might give this card a second sort of renaissance, if you will, and allow it to see a little bit more play. And this art is just fantastic. Like the Weatherlight just getting blown up, or something trying to blow up the Weatherlight? I don't know. Super cool. Super cool. All right. Now something for all you beatdown fans out there. Hello, Nimble Mongoose. 1 green gets you a 1/1 Mongoose at uncommon all the way back from Odyssey and has the fun little ability Threshold. And Mongoose here gets +2/+2 as long as you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Now, for those of you who know your Legacy history, probably somewhere around 3 or 4 years ago, there was a deck called Rug Delver. I believe it was also called Team America for a while. Legacy deck names are weird and stupid half the time. But in any case, Rug Delver was literally built around Tarmogoyf, Delver of Secrets, and Nimble Mongoose here. Basically just a bunch of cheap, efficient threats that could beat down and were hard to interact with. Now, I would love to see a Rug Delver-esque deck emerge into Modern. We've seen it kind of happen before. I played a Rug Delver list for a couple FNMs, and it's a pretty powerful deck. You get to play like Hooting Mandrills, Snapcaster Mages, of course the iconic Delver of Secrets and Snapcaster Mages. And it's a pretty powerful deck, but it lacks the removal that modern decks really need to have. It was relying on lightning bolts and a really painful dismember and a very painful mana base too. Lots of shocks and fetches to make the deck actually function properly. And just, it was good, but it couldn't really hold a candle to some of the decks that just went bigger and faster, things like Death Shadow, things like that. Hell, this would be a great card in Death Shadow. A 4-color Death Shadow deck would be awesome. But just to be able to like Thought Scour yourself, crack your fetch land, cycle your Street Wraith and everything. Oh, Street Wraith goes in the Astral Slide deck too. Would make Nimble Mongoose really big, really fast, and is so hard to interact with. You know, you can path a Gurmag Angler, you can path an Ancient one, you can Ancient Grudge that. You can't touch Nimble Mongoose because it's just too fast. I think this would be really cool. You know, I don't think it's overly powerful. It's only a 3/3, but I can just imagine a swarm of these little guys, like a couple of doublers to back it up with, and some Pyromancer tokens. Awesome. Now, I will say, True Name Nemesis is not on this list because I think that card might be too powerful. But this is a card that Nimble Mongoose, that's a card that Nimble Mongoose really would play well again with, especially if it was in Modern. But let's not push things too far. Next up, I'm going to throw it back to us blue mages here because we're all blue mages. Some of us just don't know it yet. This is Fact or Fiction. 3 in a blue, instant, uncommon, all the way from Invasion block. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and opponent separates those piles into 2 face-up, or those cards into 2 face-up piles. You put 1 pile in your hand and 1 pile in your graveyard. I'll tell you right now, there's no right way to play this card. Or I should say, there's no way to split the piles. You will never be able to outsmart your opponent if they cast Fact or Fiction on you. You know, it used to be the old acronym EOT FOFYL. End of turn Fact or Fiction, you lose. Like, that was the old moniker. Because, you know, the cards back then, you know, and obviously they'd be so very powerful still, you know, if your opponent casts Fact or Fiction on your end step, you had no idea what was going to happen. So you make like a 3-2 pile, you know, you never like a 4-1 or a 5-0 pile. That was just suicide. But you're usually making 3-2 piles, and you never know what your opponent wants, especially in Modern, where they want cards in their graveyard actively for Snapcaster mages and dredging and stuff like that. There's no right way to play around this card. They simply get whatever the hell they want, and you're going to lose. But if you don't play into it, they're just like, okay. Or if you do play into something else, they're like, cool, Cryptic Command. Next, I'm going to hold it up again. I'm going to Fact or Fiction or Cryptic Command. This card would be so damn powerful. And I don't know if there's enough room for a bunch of copies of this in Modern Control decks. But you bet your ass I'd play at least 1 or 2 because I love Fact or Fiction. EOT FOFYL. Love it. Fact or Fiction would be awesome in Modern. Next up, another little cheat here. This is Containment Priest. Obviously, she was printed in the 2014 Commander decks, I think is what that symbol is. 1 and a white gets you a Human Cleric 2/2 with Flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, you exile it instead. Now, obviously, this sees a lot of play in Vintage against the Dredge decks, against some of the Oath of Druid decks, and I think this would have a really cool place in Modern, especially against decks that like to just make, you know, obviously a ton of creatures out of nowhere. So things like Empty the Warrens, Dredge creatures being able to pull back, let's see here. Oh, shoot. What's the 2/1 Vampire Spear? I just forgot it. It has landfall. Prize Amalgam, you know, the other ones that would come back from the graveyard immediately. You know, cards like that you need to be able to beat. You know, casting creatures off of or not even casting, but just putting them into play off of an Aether Vial. Containment Priest stops. Collected Company, this stops as well. And there's a lot of decks that would really be able to abuse those engines, and they have fallen by the wayside a little bit. But I think a card like Containment Priest would make a really cool addition to these black-white hate bears or these green-white hate bear decks, and maybe even sideboards for white-based control decks like Jeskai and Azorius. So definitely a role player, not an overpowered card by any stretch of the imagination. Bloodghast, damn it, there it is. But would definitely be a role player against a lot of decks that do have a lot of power to them. So Containment Priest is pretty cool and would be a neat little reprint as long as they don't use that horrible invocation art. Just terrible. Next up, I'm going to side with the enemy here. I'm going to show you guys Xantid Swarm. This is a single green insect at rare all the way back from Scourge. It has flying. It's a 0/1. That's weird, isn't it? But when Xantid Swarm attacks, defending player can't cast spells this turn. Now, this is a rather narrow card, and so I don't know if it would be all that practical in Modern, but you never know. But this belongs in the sideboards of the Storm decks. So obviously, you know, Legacy especially is a very easy to interact format because you have things like Daze and Force of Will, and so Xantid Swarm here really plays a role in being able to, you know, make sure it can attack, and then you can kind of go off and your opponent can't counter your spells or do anything to disrupt your combo, and hopefully you can Tendrils of Agony them out of the game. Xantid Swarm will play a very similar role to that in the blue-red Storm decks. Now, you know, obviously they can go off on your instep by kind of loading up their graveyard, casting. Shoot, I'm forgetting all the cards that I'm. So we have Past in Flames. I forgot the rest of the cards that go into Blue-Red Storm. Wow, it's been so long since I played against it. That's Gifts Ungiven. There we go. When it's a one-man show, I tend to forget things very quickly. So things like Gifts Ungiven become, you know, much more powerful on their instant, obviously, to give you that setup for their turn. And when they're able to cast and attack with Xantid Swarm, you're kind of sitting on your thumbs. So you've got to be able to path it, bolt it, push it, whatever you got to do to get rid of this thing so that you can cast your spells and interact with the Storm combo. So very, very narrow, but I think this might be a fun one to add to the format. Would Storm go for it, or they just not care? I don't know. Next up, another bit of a cheat card here because I'm looking at Baleful Strix. Baleful Strix. So this little guy here is a blue-black artifact creature bird. He's been a rare, he's been an uncommon. He has flying and death touch, and when he enters the battlefield, draw a card. This is honestly one of my favorite Magic cards ever printed. It's just so elegant. I would love to see this in Modern, get to see it in some kind of a blue-black Tezzerator shell, or even just like a blue-black control deck. Would just love to have an effect like this. Heck, you could play it in like a Sultai value shell because this would count for Tarmogoyfs all of a sudden. You know, this guy goes in the graveyard. That's two card types in the graveyard for Tarmogoyf. You know, if we're turning on Delirium or something like that, this card is so versatile and just so innocuous. And just, what can you say about this guy? Obviously, I'd love to see it paired up with Shardless Agents and they'd be able to cascade into this, or, you know, Ancestral Visions or something like that. But I don't want to get too greedy here. I don't want all the value in the world. I just want a little bit. Baleful Strix, I think, would just be a really cool card to see get printed into the Modern format. It's not degenerate. It's just a good value engine, and it'd be really cool to see this take alongside along Tezzeret, like I mentioned, and maybe even these 4-color War Prison decks that we're seeing pop up recently. So pretty coll here. And maybe let's throw a Moxable reprint in there too, because that card's $100, and I'm sad I sold my set like 6 years ago. But anyway, that's not the point. My last card here for tonight. This is the last card I want to see if you printed into Modern. I'm going to throw another bone to you green players out there, specifically you Elves players out there. I've got Wirewood Symbiote. A single green gets you a 1/1 insect at uncommon that can let you return an elf you control to its owner's hand and untap target creature. Play its ability only once per turn. So I can see this going in, you know, alongside with Shaman of the Pack, especially to be able to bounce that back to your hand on their instep and then recast it off of Cavern of Souls for the absolute rubbins there, and really just start to drain your opponent out. I think would be really cool. All the other little, and to be able to untap all the mana-producing elves in that deck, I think will be a really cool way to sort of push that deck even more to the point where it's so powerful. And, you know, with all that extra mana, you're able to pair this up with Beast Whisperer and get something pretty close, I think, to a pseudo Glimpse of Nature. I think is what we're getting close to. Obviously, that card is banned and probably should stay banned forever. Amen. But I think Wirewood Symbiote would give the Elves deck just that little extra boost of power that would really push it to sort of that next level. And I think, you know, I know a lot of people who play Elves and they love Elves. And it's a cool deck, but there's just something that it's being held back right now. Just can't really get that oomph right there, you know, even if you have all the Azuri triggers in the world. But I think this might just be that little extra bit of power to push the deck into sort of maybe that tier 2, tier 1.5 range. So pretty cool cards here. I think I did a good job here with sort of catching the gambits of powerful cards here. I looked at a lot of different things. I looked at things like, Entomb and Buried Alive, Sneak Attack, and some of that stuff just seems way too powerful. Pattern of Rebirth was brought up a lot. I saw that one online where you can sacrifice a turn 2, pop it off on turn 3 off of Sakura Tribe Elder, and then you go and get Emrakul, which is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, there's so many powerful cards that exist in Legacy and Vintage, obviously, that I think if Wizards really wants to cultivate Modern moving forward, I think this is their best solution they've had in a long time. And if this is going to point towards, the evolution of what Modern and Eternal formats look like over the next couple of years, that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing because, they're running out of ability to put really powerful cards in Standard without sort of warping that format, so that those cards can bleed into Modern. And we get a card or two every set or so, but they're it takes something truly groundbreaking, sort of like the new Arclight Phoenix, to really push into these formats and really break out, because they're just so damn powerful, and they do something just so absurd within the context of the format. Especially even Legacy, now we're seeing Arclight Phoenix decks pop up. So there's a lot of cool cards out there. I cannot wait for spoiler season to start. Obviously, you have to get through War of the Spark first, and the potential for there to be uncommon Planeswalkers in that set, because every pre-release kit comes with a stamped foil Planeswalker in there, and I don't know what the hell that means, but it's kind of cool and kind of scary. We'll see. Probably find out about that very, very soon. But I'm going to call it there for the night, guys. So that has been my top 10-ish cards that I'd like to see get reprinted in Modern Horizons to move into the Modern format and really supercharge the format to maybe a broken degree. Who knows? So yeah, don't forget, down in the comments, guys, let me know what you are excited to see come from the set. Go crazy with it. Do you want to see Force of Will? Do you want to see Days? Do you want to see Hymn to Turok? Do you want this to just basically turn into Legacy Light? Which, not such a bad thing, I don't think. As long as you're not having to pay for Underground Seas, that's okay with me. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And again, big shout out to our sponsor, FlipsideGaming.com. Use the promo code EOT at checkout to get 10% off of your order of $10 or more. And we will be back next week for more episodes of the EOT Newsflash. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow night at twitch.tv/EOT Newsflash for the Thursday night throwdown, where I hopefully will not be throwed down myself. One of these days, I swear, I'm a better drafter in person. I don't know what it is about Arena, but yeah. Anyway, that's enough of that. So, thank you for watching, guys. I will see y'all next week. And yeah, we'll do it again.